As we speak, the Republican National Convention is taking place in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and joining us for a kind of on the grounds view of what's going on in Milwaukee are David Crowley. He is a county executive for the city of Milwaukee, and Christopher Walton. He is a former chair of the Milwaukee Democratic Party. Good to see you, my friend Chris, and thanks for joining us, David. Let me start with you, David. Conventions can be great for a city because they bring lots of people in. Folks spend lots of money in restaurants and bars and help that economy. How is Milwaukee feeling about having the RNC there? And what is it going to do for the city, either positively or negatively?
Well, first and foremost, thank you for having me on your show, Areva. So glad to be here. But, Milwaukee, for the past 6 years, we've been trying to figure out how do we shine a much brighter spotlight on the city of Milwaukee, Milwaukee County, and our entire region. Started with us landing the DNC, which we were going to have in 2020, but it was upended because of the pandemic. The following year, our great Milwaukee Bucks won a championship year, which definitely put the spotlight on us. And we know as a Democratic community, hosting the Republican National Convention provides the same level of opportunity. And so we want to showcase all the things that we have to offer, because no matter where you come from in this country or in this world, we have something that you can definitely enjoy. And so it's for us, we want them to spend their money. We want them to enjoy all the things that we have to offer so they can make a decision on whether or not they want to be able to come back, because we have a beautiful community. But I will tell you, I don't agree with any of the policies of this nominee or the Republican National Convention or their delegates. So for us, it's an opportunity to see the stark contrast between President Biden and our former president. And really, it's our job to make sure that we bring that contrast to the people, to make sure that we get voters out this upcoming November.
No, well said. We know that, Chris, there are a lot of criticisms made of your great city. David just described a wonderful city that he wants to showcase, but Donald Trump didn't want to spend a night in the hotels in Milwaukee and was talking about, I guess, going to Chicago. There's a Trump Tower in Chicago. And then he was pretty much shamed by the residents of Milwaukee. And it looks like, I guess he's going to stay there tonight. And during this convention, what do you make of this? The fact that he was so critical of this city?
This isn't a surprise. This is who Donald Trump always has been. We know Donald Trump does not like Milwaukee because he actually tried back in 2020 to throw out Milwaukee's votes because they didn't vote for him. He lost the city of Milwaukee almost 80-90%. He lost Milwaukee County 70% or more. So, the feeling is mutual. We don't like him. We don't really want him around as it is. But at the same time, we love Milwaukee. President Biden and Vice President Harris have made sure very clear that they've come to Milwaukee several times this year alone. I've most recently, I got a chance to meet the president in December when he was in town, and he's been at least 3 or 4 times since then. This president and this administration has made it very clear where they stand. And the previous administration and this new guy who they just picked has also made it very clear where they're standing. It's not for Milwaukee. It's not for the people of Milwaukee. It's not for a diverse community like Milwaukee. And if we're going to show them again in November, we're not for them either.
One thing that's interesting, David, it's kind of interesting that the RNC is having their convention at a place where Donald Trump has been pretty clear he doesn't tend to care for the voters, the residents of Milwaukee. I'm sure he'd love your votes if it would get him over the finish line. He'll take any votes, but he has been critical, and there are protesters who are out in the streets in Milwaukee right now. And, reports are that they've come from all over the country. What can you tell us about the protesters? Who are they? Where they come from? And what are they protesting?
Oh, absolutely. Yes, we have protesters from all over the country, but also more importantly, we have protesters that come right here from our own backyard. Many people in this community understand, as Chris eloquently put, that the Republican Party and Trump does not care for this community. So one, they are protesting his nomination, but they're also protesting the policies that they have been pushing all across this country for the past couple of years, continuously taking away the rights of women to have an abortion. And now with the vice presidential pick, this is a guy who doesn't even believe in abortion, even through rape and incest. We've made incredible strides in investing in affordable housing, not just within the city of Milwaukee, but in suburban communities where we would usually hear about NIMBYism. We've expanded mental health services, focusing on, the opioid crisis that has directly impacted communities of color. And so they are up in Milwaukee protesting the fact that this guy doesn't care for the American people. He only wants to be the president for about half of this country. And quite frankly, that's the stark contrast in this entire election. When this weekend we had crazy stuff happening with Trump, right? And people condemned the violence that was going on. But if you go back, when Nancy Pelosi's husband was hostage and his life was being, almost taken from him, there were people who mocked him. And so at the end of the day, these people are protesting the fact that we need a future for America. And the President Trump and his administration, what he wants to bring to the forefront with Project 25, so on and so forth, is not Wisconsin values, and it definitely doesn't sit with the American values.
Let's talk some about this VP pick. It was much anticipated. Chris, Donald Trump likes to have his little beauty contest, right? He likes to have folks auditioning. He likes to have you kiss the ring, show your loyalty, and go through, his little test. And then he pretty much already knew, I'm sure, who he was going to pick from day one, but he still likes all of the attention. He likes to show, the voters that people will do just about anything to be in his presence. So were you surprised that it was JD Vance, not Marco Rubio, not Tim Scott, not Nikki Haley, not some of the other folks who were auditioning? How surprised were you about JD Vance, if at all?
There's a lot of ways I can go with that one. I wasn't surprised at all that he didn't pick, as he would probably call them, a DEI pick, because it doesn't support diversity, equity, and inclusion. So it doesn't shock me that they would not go down that direction. One thing that, I do feel bad for Tim Scott's girlfriend, quote unquote, but, we'll figure that out. But as far as JD Vance is a caricature of Donald Trump. It is beyond the comparison. Like, he literally picked himself, but younger. Because since, we want to put a 39-year-old right behind this 78-year-old heartbeat, a man who literally has only been in elected office for 18 months. JD Vance has consistently been a Republican right-wing talking head. This man, even though, he called Donald Trump America's Hitler at one point, he's sure standing right behind, goose stepping and saluting right now, right behind him. He supports banning an abortion nationwide. He's actually compared slavery and abortion as nearly the same thing. This is also somebody who believes that gay marriage shouldn't even exist. Now, I find that strictly appalling because, we don't go off what we believe here. We actually are legislating real laws and affecting real people's lives. I don't believe he has a neck. I don't know how he ties a tie, but that doesn't mean it doesn't exist. So, we are looking at a situation where we have a man who is not comparable, especially considering who he's got to go up against in debate. You have a 2-year, 18-month-long senator versus the sitting vice president of the United States, a woman who was the district attorney of San Francisco, a woman who was the attorney general of the state of California, the second largest justice department in the entire country, second only to the United States Justice Department, a sitting U.S. senator, and the vice presidency. Like, you don't send a boy to take on a woman.
Very well said, Chris. And I was just looking up the comment that JD Vance said about abortion. What he said, he was being asked about an abortion ban for abortions after 6 weeks of pregnancy. And he said, and they says, what about exceptions for rape and incest? And he disagreed with the premise of that question and said, 2 wrongs don't make a right. At the end of the day, we're talking about an unborn baby. And, again, that's a sleight of hand. There's no baby at 4 weeks of pregnancy. And, that's the whole notion that these anti-abortionists try to use, that you are killing a baby. So this is so at odds, David, with the effort today in the platform of the Republicans, which was the 16-page document that they're trying to gaslight us into believing is going to be the document that would govern the presidency of a Republican, versus the 900-plus page of the Project 2025. But the new stance on abortion, and I say new because they change as the wind blows, is let the states decide. But there is even language in this 16-page document giving personhood to fetuses, and that's right up JD Vance's alley. What do you make of what this now VP candidate has said about abortion and where this country clearly is about abortion rights?
Well, it tells me that we have a long way to go. It is unfortunate that we are literally trying to win back the rights and the freedoms that was won prior to me even being born. And so I think it's extremely important that we put out the facts. When somebody shows you who they are the first time, you have to believe them. And so he put people on the Supreme Court who are looking to go away with Roe v. Wade. And now we know that we have a vice presidential candidate who doesn't believe in abortion in any type of case. And so at the end of the day, what we have to realize is that Donald Trump is railroading the Republicans. And there are many folks who are kind of, quite frankly, upset with the current platform that they've put out there. And so this isn't, my grandfather's or somebody's grandfather's old Republican old party. This is something brand new. And Project 2025 really spells out the fact that they are going to do everything that they can to hone in the power so Donald Trump can have his way. And that's what JD Vance is there to do. Again, he said that he didn't like Trump. He talked so much about him. But let's face it, when it comes down to Trump, you either get down or you lay down. If you don't get involved in this campaign and support his campaign, that means that your position in office is going to be in jeopardy. And that's the reason why I think that JD Vance has gotten involved in this race. It's because he's one of the very few who's been there, who's willing to change his tune, because he's only been there for 18 months and nobody knows.
Well, also, we should note that JD Vance is a venture capitalist. He has strong ties to the business community, to the Silicon Valley tech community. And one of the things he's going to bring, hopefully Donald Trump, I'm sure, is hoping on, because he needs a lot of money for his legal fees, is bringing his contacts to big business, bringing his contacts to Silicon Valley, and bringing money to this campaign. Chris, he's kind of sick. Well, he's sickening on so many levels, but he talks about members of the elite class. This is JD Vance. This is a dude that went to Yale Law School. He's a wealthy young white man with ties to Silicon Valley, and likes to talk about the elite as if he's not one of them.
Right. And this is also the same man that started a nonprofit and used the money from that nonprofit to actually pay to start a political career. Even though this nonprofit was supposed to be used to actually help fight back against the issues around drugs in Eastern Ohio. The situation is, we're looking at somebody who was unprepared to be vice president. We're looking at a situation where we have somebody who is literally an acolyte of the MAGA movement. He wants nothing more but then to continue pushing this country further and further right. He is not going to be supportive of Ukraine. He actually supports Russia's invasion of the Ukraine. He supports all of the things that we are opposed to, whether it be standing up against oil companies. He actually is in favor of actually accelerating climate change. He has constantly echoed the claims of Donald Trump, even saying that he wouldn't have certified the election results in 2020. So, he may want to, I guess he got the lesson from Mike Pence, but learned it the wrong way of how to be vice president for Donald Trump. When it comes down to it, JD Vance this is way above him. Like, he is not capable of doing this. But hey, we'll see.
Yeah, it's really interesting because he did grow up poor, I guess he claims, in the Rust Belt part of Ohio. Goes on to Yale Law School, goes into the Marines, comes out, makes a lot of money. He's a millionaire, and he has this kind of populist. Tries to have this kind of populist appeal similar to Donald Trump, that he's somehow for the people because he did grow up poor. He's very, very anti any kind of safety net programs that the government offers, has these very antiquated and ignorant positions about marriage and family, suggesting that women should stay in unhappy marriages, that women, he says something like they shouldn't change, husbands like their underwear, even if they are in abusive marriages. He has so many statements he's got to try to now put into context and try to explain to us what he really meant now that he's on the national stage. This was a calculation by Donald Trump, David. He could have gone with a woman. Obviously, Nikki Haley had a lot of voters. He could have gone with a person of color. Tim Scott wanted the job desperately. What do you make, other than the money, of him selecting this young white male when the country has been saying we want diversity?
I think that's a great question. And, other than the money, other than Donald Trump wanting to enrich himself, I think he's showing the entire American public that he wants to turn back the clock. I mean, let's face it, the policies that they have been putting in place is at a time where Black people wouldn't even be able to vote, where we weren't necessarily recognized as citizens. And so he is showing us that he wants to make America great again, which is a time where it was never great for anybody who looked like me and you. And so as we look to the future, we have to talk about the fact that while we both have old candidates, right? And I think that we have to put that on the table. There's one candidate who wants to focus on the future, that speaks to the ideas and the opportunities that my 3 young girls will be able to take advantage of. While you have Trump literally trying to, again, roll back the clock to a time where, quite frankly, nobody wants to go back to. And so having a person like JD Vance is, again, showing us showing the true colors of Trump and this Republican Party, that it's not about the future. They want to go back into a time where they have control and they can continue to hone in that control to enrich themselves.
Yeah, a couple of things you should know. Vance does not believe the climate crisis exists. So he's a climate denier. He's called electric vehicle production a scam. He's a strong supporter of the oil and gas industry, no surprise there, opposes wind and solar energy. He asserts that Trump won the 2020 presidential election and said that if he had been vice president then, this is probably another reason he got selected, he said he would not have certified the election results as Mike Pence did. He dismissed the idea that Trump was anyhow related to or responsible for January 6th. And on immigration, he wants to finish building the wall. He opposes every attempt to grant amnesty to immigrants. Interesting to know his wife is a woman of Indian descent, probably an immigrant, if not family members would have to be. She's from India originally, but yet he opposes all immigration efforts for amnesty. This guy is dangerous. As you said, a younger, more dangerous version than Donald Trump. I just want to read a little bit more about JD Vance, who we now know is the running mate, 39-year-old conservative senator from the state of Ohio, only been a senator a couple of years, is a lawyer from Yale Law School, is a millionaire because of his venture capitalist business. He opposed a bill protecting gay and interracial marriage rights, called the legislation a bizarre distraction from other issues. He describes gender-affirming care for minors as gruesome, irreversible operations. And military aid, I think you mentioned this, Chris. Vance has openly been critical of the U.S. sending military aid to Ukraine. He did an interview with Steve Bannon. He says, "I've got to be honest with you. I don't really care what happens to Ukraine one way or the other." He has committed to sending more funding to Israel amid the Israel-Hamas war. I want to go back to this interracial marriage. So, Chris, we had Tim Scott. We had Byron Donalds, 2 Black men who were kissing the ring, trying to become the GOP vice presidential candidates. And here is the new guy, the guy that got selected, says he pretty much opposes legislation that would protect gay marriages as well as interracial marriages.
Right. Very interesting. Considering the people who have generally been against these interracial marriages or gay marriages, people like Clarence Thomas, people like Tim Scott, people like JD Vance, yet they're all interracially married. So, your spouse, I would be like, take the hint.
I think they only really oppose Blacks married to white people. Really, let's just be honest. They don't, if you're Asian or his wife is Indian, so she's considered Asian, that's okay. It's really anti-Blackness. We just need to call it out.
Right. Well, I don't know what color Clarence Thomas think he is, but I don't know about Tim Scott. I don't know if he agrees with interracial marriage. I don't know if he agrees with gay marriage. I don't know which marriage he is more interested in right now. But I don't think he was actually the candidate. He was ever going to be the candidate. But they love to have people like Tim Scott and Byron Donald, and they love to have them out there with shucking and jiving just for their entertainment, honestly, because that's what it is. They love to see them. This is my black. This is what Donald Trump thinks of these type of people. So, the fact that they submitted themselves to this just to be made fun of and laughed at tells you a lot about them, but also tells you a lot about the current stage of the Republican Party.
Yeah, no, it's sad that you're right. Both we know men who are in interracial marriages are so anti-interracial marriages. That's so ironic. David, I get the Chicago Sun-Times. I get the newsletter every morning. And this morning, an article by a woman named Lynn Sweet. She's the Washington bureau chief for the Chicago Sun-Times, which is the major paper in Chicago. Her headline was, "We're all MAGA now. The assassination attempt on former President Trump instantly switched the political calculus heading into November, even more in his favor, with the Republican National Convention here in Milwaukee today, poised to welcome their nominee as the martyr he always portrayed himself to be." There were several other headlines like that, talking about the image of bloody Trump pumping his fist will become one of the iconic photos of these charged political times. Folks going on to write about, this pumped fist and this martyr syndrome somehow is making Trump more favorable to win in November. I don't get that. What's your take on that?
Not only do I not get that, but I don't believe that that's true. I think that a lot of people, whether they're voting for President Biden or voting for the former president, that situation that happened did not sway folks to say that I'm going to vote for Trump, right? At the end of the day, I think what really needs to happen is that we have to tone down a lot of the rhetoric that we're seeing out there. Whether we're talking about the hateful lies, the deceitful information, dis and misinformation that is out there. But quite frankly, we have to call a thing what it is. When we see the violent political rhetoric that is out there, that has come from the Republican Party. That has come from Trump himself. And he has actually targeted different types of individuals and groups. And we have seen him campaigning like this since he actually started running for president back in 2016. And so the reason why we're seeing this level of violence in our politics is quite frankly because they have started it. And we've seen that tweet. We've seen the tweet from JD Vance, who doubled down, right? Before any information could come out about what exactly was going on, he tried to blame President Biden. President Biden is the only one that's really trying to figure out a way to unify this country and trying to put us on the right track, making sure that there's a future, something that we can all believe in. And so, no, I do not believe that what happened over the weekend is going to fortify some type of victory for a former president. But again, we can't allow what we're seeing, these visuals, to change our minds. We need to look at the substance. Now, the appearances, yes, things are happening. And crazier things have happened in our political time. But let's look at the substance of what's going on. President Biden, he's bringing different levels of policies that directly impact Black and brown Americans and people at the kitchen table. And President Trump has not brought anything of substance to the table. Matter of fact, he's running against the policies that they've even been putting forth because he knows that the American public doesn't want these things. And so, no, I don't believe that people are lining up to vote for Trump because of what they've seen. I think many people have more questions about why are this level of violence happening in the political arena in the first place.
No, I totally agree with you on that. Chris, this article goes on, this Chicago Sun-Times article goes on to say, the contrasts are sharp. Democrats heading to their Chicago convention in August are divided over Biden's fate. Republicans are solidly united behind Trump. Illinois Republican National Committee man Richard Porter didn't back Trump during the GOP primary. He thought it was time for a change. That didn't happen. So he's with Trump. Porter is the one that says we're all MAGA now. Now, I think there's some legitimacy to that. If you look at the headlines just 2 days ago, Democrats, we were still fighting internally about stepping down Joe, step aside Joe. And Republicans like Porter, you may know, Illinois Republican National Committee man Richard Porter saying we're all going in, we're MAGA now. We might have voted for someone else, but we're not calling for our top guy to step down. We are all throwing our support behind him. What do you say to that, Chris?
Well, you know what, and everybody has come together to say we deplore political violence. There should be no political violence. We settle our issues at the ballot box, full stop. At the same time, we have to look at the people who are what's causing this to be this way. This did not just start last night. This didn't just start last week. This all started when Donald Trump came down that escalator in 2015 and said that they're sending rapists, they're sending murderers to the United States, castigating an entire group of people, calling them literally the enemies of the people, going after, saying we're going to ban Muslims from coming to the United States, saying that if you don't...
Stop you there, Chris. If all those things are true, the point of this passage in the article was that these folks, i.e. Republicans, are getting together. They're coalescing around their candidate, even though they may not have voted for him. In contrast to the Democrats, we are 5 weeks away from our convention. And up until 2 days ago, pretty much every article in the paper on television was about us, a new person saying Joe Biden should step down. So they were contrasting the support for Donald Trump going into this convention versus the divided way that we being Democrats are going into our convention in just about 5 weeks.
Well, we're Democrats. I always think of the old quote, I'm not a member of an organized political party. I'm a Democrat. We don't fall in line. We fall in love with our candidates. We have to always, we're nitpicking. We're going to ask those questions and challenge our candidates because we're not lemmings. We don't just follow in line and fall off the cliff. But I know one thing with the end of the day, Joe Biden is the nominee of this party. Kamala Harris is going to be the vice president again of this party. They are going to go out there and campaign hard all across this country, including in Milwaukee, and make sure that when at the end of the day, Wisconsin and this country will be voting for Joe Biden.
Chris, there's some polls out. I don't pay close attention to them. I suspect you don't either, but there are some out there saying that Biden is slipping in some of the key battleground states like Pennsylvania. I keep telling people if they're not enthused about the Democrats, they should be mad about Trump. And that anger can motivate you to the polls in the same way that enthusiasm may have done when Black folks in particular are voting for Joe Biden. This is a numbers game. We win. Democrats win hands down if we get our voters out. But right. Dems, and I'm glad you're here because you've been a party chair. All the texts I get from my Dem friends, they're clutching their pearls. They're so worried. Oh, Areva, what about Trump? What about this? They are just like petrified. What about George Clooney's op-ed? It got publicized to 10 million, online folks. What can we do to calm these Democrats down and just have them do the work and turn out the votes and we'll win?
That's the thing. Even when you look at all the polls, Donald Trump keeps hitting his 47%. That's all he ever gets, 47%. There's still 53% of the country out there that is anti-Donald Trump. We need that 53% of the country to get up, shut up, get out there, go to work. If you're so afraid, what are you doing to stop it from happening? Have you knocked on a door? Have you made a phone call? Have you put out a yard sign? Have you donated to the campaign? Have you done anything other than sit and whine in the corner and say, I don't want this to happen? What are you doing to stop it from happening? We have offices open all throughout the country. If you are in California and you need an idea of what to do, I implore you, reach out to wisdems.org. We need phone bankers. We know we're not worried about California, but you can make phone calls into Wisconsin so we can get those people to engage and get out there and campaign. Or you can go right next door. There are things to do. We have things to do, people. We can't cower in the corner in fear and say he's going to lose. Because if that's where we stay, then yeah, we're going to lose. But we have an ability to win. We can win this race. This is not a lost cause. We can win this house. We can win the White House back. We can win the House of Representatives back. And we can keep the United States Senate if we get up and get active.
Yeah. So David, I got a text from a person. I won't name them. It was the judge tosses Trump documents case ruling prosecutor was lawfully appointed. And with the article, she says, are we doomed? And I said, why doomed? Vote. If there was ever motivation to vote against Trump, this is Exhibit A. And then she goes on and says, the uneducated, uninformed will think it was thrown out because he is not so bad. That photo of him bloodied, American flag overhead, fist in air, just inspired many yahoos to get out and vote. We need something big. I just watched Wag the Dog movie, blah, blah, blah. I just wanted to scream at this person. Why would your first inclination be that we're doomed rather than, I can't believe this judge just did this. We've got to send a message to these folks that this is not justice. This legal system cannot be manipulated by Trump appointed judges, and he can't be given a pass when others in the criminal justice system would be held accountable. How do we get folks? You're on the ground. I know Milwaukee is going to vote and turn out for Biden-Harris, but how do we get these folks in these key battleground states to get into the mindset? We're not doomed. This is June. We got a lot of time between now and November. But Dems I get it. We don't fall in line. We got to fall in love. But we also can be, we saw with Hillary Clinton, we can buy into the messages like the emails, and we can feel defeated and let that feeling of defeat cause us to be defeated.
Well, let's be honest here, right? The reason why we're not seeing that enthusiasm that we have seen before is because this is a rematch. Whether you're watching an NFL game or a basketball game or any championship game, nobody wants to tune into a rematch anywhere in this country. But at the end of the day, there are real things that are on the line. And so if you do feel like you are doomed, we're not asking you to cover your head and go back into a cave. This is when you got to give back. And I tell folks all the time, there are three things that we can do, and I call them the 3 T's. You have to give your time. This is when we're knocking on doors. We're making phone calls. We're signing letters to engage the people. You can use your talents. Now, I'm not sure if you can sing, Areva. I definitely can't. But how do we utilize our talents to bring more people to the table? Utilize that to raise awareness about what is really at stake. And last but certainly not least, because people may not have the talent or may not have the time, how do you use your treasure to actually move and encourage people to get things done in this community? And so we're not going to win any election by moping and by pouting and believing that we are doomed. We have to light a fire under ourselves. We have to get that fire within our belly and understanding that this adversity that we're facing, we have to get over this hump. And when I think about the history of Black people in this country, we had people fighting for their freedom ever since we were enslaved. Ever since we were dealing with Black codes, ever since we've been dealing with Jim Crow laws and didn't have the right to vote, they did not give up. And so when I look back, if anything, Trump wants to bring us back. If I go back, I want to channel the same spirit those folks had in making sure that we can secure our freedoms, secure our rights, because that is what's at stake. And so what we need to do, we need to talk with enthusiasm. It's not about voting against Trump, right? Because we know all the bad things that he's going to put in place. But we also have something to look forward to, and that is the future of our children, the future of our Black boys and girls that are going to do amazing things. And so if we're doomed, just imagine how our children are feeling. And our children, when they ask us 20 years from now, what did you do to stand up to fascism? What did you do to stand up to the policies that were eroded over years that we're now still fighting for 20 years later? We're going to have to answer to that. And so let's look at our young people. Let's look at our future and use that to bring that enthusiasm. Plus, optimism is a force multiplier. If we're not optimistic about what we have in the Biden-Harris administration, it's going to be very difficult for us to get over the hump. But I'm telling you right now, Areva, my job is to bring the enthusiasm. My job is to share our vision and tell the Democratic story, because there have been incredible investments. And so we can focus on the gas, but those gas should not overshadow the 3.5 years worth of investments and improvements that we have seen all across this community, even particularly for Black people, seeing the rise in Black businesses, seeing the unemployment rate, particularly here in Milwaukee, between Black and white people, that disparity dwindled just a little bit. There is light at the end of the tunnel. So we got to hunker down. And if you look back, right, Trump didn't always have the support. But now, just like you said, we're all MAGA. But they've already been MAGA. They've been trying to separate themselves from Trump for at least the past 4 years. But unfortunately, you don't have any Republicans who have enough courage to stand up to the fascism, to stand up to this bad direction that we're leading the country in when it comes down to the Republicans. And that's really what's unfortunate. And that's what should be encouraging us and giving us the enthusiasm that we need.
Well, on that note, so eloquently said by David Crowley, we are going to end this show. We are out of time, but thank you so much, David, for your enthusiasm, because it's infectious. And if more people would show their own enthusiasm, as you said, it's a force multiplier, we can win this election. We are not going to win being afraid of Donald Trump. We beat him before, people. So let history be your guide. We have won and we have beat him before. We beat him in the midterms. We can do this. Let them have their convention, but we're going to have ours. And I think we're going to go into our convention as motivated as possible. And we're going to go in with a spirit of can do versus can't do. Again, Christopher Walton, David Crowley, always a pleasure to be in conversation with smart people who believe in this democracy. I love it. So thanks for joining me.